Okay, so now our next step is going to be to color our 1-point perspective names. So these look really, really great once you color them with colored pencil, which is what we're going to do. You're going to choose a single color to work with. We're going to be doing a monochromatic color scheme. And we're going to be deciding where we would like a light source to be coming from so that we give the appearance that these are actually real three-dimensional block letters where light affects them the same way that they would in, say, the 6/8 of value, where you have a light side and a shadow side and all that sort of good stuff. So once you've cleaned up your name, you want to erase everything as much as possible, all of the extra lines. Mine are still pretty visible just because I have to draw darkly enough for the video camera to see my lines. But but you want to make sure that everything is nice and cleaned up with your eraser. You can go back and darken your lines if you want to, just to make them pop a little bit more for visual effect. And then what we're going to do is decide where you'd like your light source to be coming from. So let's say, for example, I'd like my light source to be coming from down here in this direction. What that means is that light source is going to hit every single letter from the same exact direction, from the same exact angle, because light rays don't turn or radiate. They all come in parallel. So in looking at that, we're going to decide first off which plane of our letter is going to get the most amount of light. So if my light source is coming in sort of from this bottom right-hand side and it's coming upward underneath the letter, in that particular circumstance, I think that the bottom of my letter would get the most amount of light. So I am going to very, very, very lightly shade my bottom plane with a nice light soft value. We'll call that value 1. Then what I'm going to think about is, are there any other bottom planes, anything that's facing underneath for this letter? So this spot is a bottom plane and so is this. So I want to shade both of those consistently the same. Notice that'll be my lightest value, so I'm sort of using my fingernail over here to help me just kind of stay coloring inside my lines. I'm doing this very quickly. Then I need to decide is what side would get the next most amount of light. It'd be a little bit darker. Perhaps it would be this side plane. So if I want to shade the side plane, I'm going to shade it just a little bit darker. Again, I use this fingernail sort of as a barrier to make sure I don't bump outside of my lines. Very quickly, just for the sake of time. So this one might get a good amount of light, just not quite as much as that bottom plane. Now, the other side plane that we see on the right side would be this one, so it would be matching the same value. We'll call this value 2. Bottoms will be value 1. The right sides will be value 2. Then according to this letter, sorry, this is also a value 2. This little side plane right there. Now, according to the sides that we have left is the front face. So this side will be darker still. It'll be a 3rd value because it might be getting the least amount of light for that specific letter. So I'm going to shade it a little bit darker. I don't want to go my full pencil pressure because I'll show you in just a minute. We'll actually need a value darker than this. But I want it fairly dark where I've got enough contrast to see the distinction between the different planes of my letters. Again, I'm doing this very quickly, so make sure that yours is nice and neat and controlled. I also like choosing a color that can go fairly dark, choosing a really light value color like, yellows or light oranges or really pale colors tend to be a little bit harder to get the full value range out of them. So that's very quick, but that sort of gives you a nice colors for each of my letters moving across my page. Anything that is a bottom facing plane would all be consistently the same value because the light is going to affect it the same way. So if this is our value 1, it's our lightest, this, and this will all be a light value. On my N, this and this, this and this, and on my A, this and this. So to kind of show you what that would start to look like, those would be bottom planes on my A, as well as this one right here. Now, depending on where your vanishing point is, affects which side of the letters you see. On this J, we see the right side, but now as we shift perspective and we come over here to the A, we suddenly see the left side. So if our light source is angling in this direction, initially we said that the front faces of our letters are our third value, our fairly dark value. So I want to make sure that this is shaded the same value as the front face of my J and then all of my other letters. However, now I have to think, on this particular letter, I have a fourth side, the left side now that I can see, which is actually faced completely polar opposite from our light source. So, with that being the case, that would tell me if our light's coming in this way, this left side is completely the opposite of that, so it's getting practically no light at all. So I'm going to very, very carefully, I know it's very slender, but I want to shade that left side even darker than the front face, which is my value 3. Now I also have this side right here. It is sort of angled down a little bit, but I can basically assume it is also a left side. So I want it to be really dark. I could make it a tiny bit lighter and make it sort of in between my value 1 and my 4, but I think just for consistency I'll make it exactly the same, since it is definitely over there on the left side. And the inside part of this little A, that's also, if you think about that plane moving up on the inside, that would also be my darkest value 4. And that's basically it. You want to go through and fit each one of your letters exactly the same.